Hello and welcome. My name is Mark Gavigan, and I'm going to teach you how to get your affairs in order. I'm the author of 2 workbooks on this subject, one of which we're going to follow pretty closely today. It's called 12 Critical Things Your Family Needs to Know. Now, you do not need to buy my book. You don't need to buy somebody else's book. If you are on a budget or if you are simply a do-it-yourself person, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to direct you to a web page where you can view every page of my book and you can see all of the information, and you can simply type or handwrite each of the items and then go out and gather that information and document it for your family. You've taken care of everything. You don't need to spend a penny to get your affairs in order. Very quickly, I came into this when my dad passed away and I was the person mostly responsible for everything. And despite a good organization system and some important conversations that revealed some information about what was important to him and where things were located, I spent weeks and weeks filled with grief, struggling to find information and documents and to try and think through what he would have wanted. So out of that horrible experience, I put together these workbooks, and here we are today. In order to find the webpage, please go to www.bit.ly/12, then CRIT. So bit.ly/12crit. And that will take you to a look inside page where you can see every single page of my book, 12 Critical Things Your Family Needs to Know, and you can follow along, and everything here will make good sense to you. The 12 major areas, and we'll get into a little bit more detail in a minute, for getting your affairs in order are as follows: your personal and family information, your family medical history, your insurances, investments, bank accounts and other financial assets, retirement plans and annuities, real estate, including your primary residence, debts and liabilities, your advisors, advanced healthcare directives. That's a living will, is typically the most commonly known part of that. Organ donation choices, final arrangements, and finally wills, trusts, and estate plans. Okay, if you're following along in the book, I'm not going to cover each and every item because you can see on that look inside page each and every item. I'm just going to mention certain highlights, and I'll give the page number, which you can follow from the upper right hand corner. You can follow along if you'd like, or refer back to things. Okay, section 1 out of the 12 critical things your family needs to know is on page 3 if you are following along in your book, or if you are looking in the look inside page from the website in another tab from your browser. I'm not going to mention each and every item on all of these pages, just the most notable ones. Date and place of birth, location of birth certificate, any adoption papers or religious document such as a date of confirmation or reaching some other milestone that the religious institution might find important that you provide evidence of. Also, your passport or immigration or citizenship documents. Are you a military veteran? If so, a service ID number, date of induction and discharge, and the location of discharge papers in the United States. That is form DD-214, a DD-214. If you have one of those, it speeds everything up. Current and prior marriages, existing alimony agreements, and the location of all of those documents. The name, date of birth, and address and contact information for children, grandchildren, parents, and siblings. We're on page 7 now. Care or support for parents, children, or others. If one of these situations is in effect, write down everything that somebody would need to know if you were not around. If you suddenly disappeared, what does someone else need to do to step in financially and personally? Are you buying groceries for somebody twice a week? Are you transporting somebody? Is there a financial arrangement? Are there legal obligations that have been undertaken? Write down as much as you can. Make sure somebody can read what you've documented and understand the who, what, where, why, and how. They really need to be able to step into your shoes if you have undertaken some of these obligations. And moving to page 12, we also have alimony and child support obligations. Who owes them? Give a little bit of the background. Who is the individual receiving them? What is the payment schedule? How much money per week or per month or per year, and when does that end? And then a location of those documents, the official original documents that someone would need to access potentially. So document all of those. Moving on to section 2 of the 12 critical things, family medical history, beginning on page 13 if you are following along. Do you have any prescriptions? What is your blood type? Are you taking any other kinds of medications? Document the reason for that. Do you have any allergies to drugs, medicines, foods, insect stings, and so on? History of any surgeries or other procedures, as well as diseases, illnesses, any symptoms or any medical conditions. And then a list of who your healthcare providers are, your doctors, pharmacists, other specialists, or dentists, and so on. And then your extended family's medical history. This is important because certain illnesses and diseases tend to run in families, like alcoholism, heart disease, high cholesterol, depression, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and many other types of cancer. And these are believed to have genetic components that can pass from one generation to others. So if a future generation is aware that because of their genetic makeup, they have a predisposition to diabetes, their healthcare provider can potentially, especially as technology advances in the future, put together some preventative measures, or at least be on the lookout to diagnose those symptoms early on. So that is why you would document your extended family's medical history. Section 3 of the 12 critical things your family needs to know, insurances. Before we delve into this subject, I'd like to speak for a moment about beneficiaries. A beneficiary is a person or an organization, such as a charity, that receives the financial benefit of some account upon your death. That could be a life insurance policy, or a pension plan, or a CD, or a money market account, or some other bank account. Upon your death, those assets go to a stated beneficiary. And the benefit of that is you get to avoid probate court, which can be very time consuming and it can be very expensive. This is not a means of avoiding estate taxes. I am certainly not an attorney or an accountant, but setting up your beneficiaries, generally speaking, is not a way to avoid estate taxes, but it is a way to legally, perfectly lawfully avoid probate court. So your assets go to the people or the organizations as you see fit. It's worth your while to periodically, maybe every year or 3 years or 5 years, make sure those beneficiaries are correct. Insurances. None of this is rocket science, but taking a few minutes to document every single insurance policy, from a tiniest little life insurance policy because you're part of some organization, all the way up to a multi-million-dollar whole life insurance policy that maybe you want to pay those benefits to a certain book author that you found helpful from the internet. Write down the name of the insurance company, the policy, what kind of insurance policy it is. Is it a whole life policy? Is it a term life insurance policy? Some kind of a variable universal policy? Who owns the policy? And that can be different than the person whose life is insured. So document who the owner is, whose life is insured. In other words, upon whose death are the death benefits payable? What are those death benefits? Who are the beneficiaries? And then where the original documents are located and what the premiums are. And you might want to know who the agent is that helped you secure that policy, and that person's address and their company name and their contact information. And similar information with regard to other insurances: health insurance, disability insurance, long-term care insurance, and so on. Section 4 of the 12 critical things your family needs to know: investments, bank accounts, and other financial assets. We're on page 24 if you are following along in the 12 Critical Things book or on the website. Not rocket science. We're going to zip right through this. Any kind of financial account or asset, make sure to write down what it is, where the records are located, who the beneficiaries are, what it's valued at, and ideally you'll have beneficiaries specified, and also if you have the original cost basis, that is also very helpful for tax purposes. And this applies to certificates of deposit or CDs, bank accounts, brokerage accounts, mutual funds, other financial assets. If you own stocks directly, you might have actual paper stock certificates in a safe or safety deposit box somewhere. If you have savings bonds, if there are other privately held assets, if there's a private business that is owned, that's a separate animal, but you certainly want to make note of that and where all those documents and where the ownership is located and who the other relevant parties are. Also, retirement plans. Even if from way back in your early work life, there was a tiny retirement plan, a 401k plan or something else, or if you were in the military, that may have over time turned into a great deal of money. And that money belongs to you or to your beneficiaries. So document all of that. And lastly, annuities. So an annuity, I'm going to talk about that for a moment. An annuity is a contract where an insurance company takes in money from you, premiums that are paid in, and that can be one single giant lump sum check, or you could pay into an annuity over time, X dollars per week or X dollars per month. And then the agreement says at some point when the annuity is annuitized, the insurance company will turn around and start making payments out to whoever is supposed to receive that money. And it could be in the form of a lump sum, or it could be X dollars every month for 10 years, or it could be X dollars every month for the rest of one person's life, or it could be X dollars a month every month for the rest of one person's life and that person's spouse's life. So they can get very complicated. But once again, if you are getting a hold of the basic information, documenting that here, you'd want to put down the insurance company's name, the account number, the value as of today or the last statement that you received, who owns that annuity, who the annuitants are. In other words, who are the individuals or maybe charitable organizations who are going to receive the payout benefits, who the beneficiaries are. So an annuity might say, hey, we're going to pay X dollars a month every month for the next 10 years to Mark Gavigan. But if I get hit by a school bus and die tomorrow, that might be the end of the payments, or X dollars might go to my designated beneficiaries. It depends how the contract was set up. If there are beneficiaries, document who they are. When was the annuity contract purchased? Try and get that, if you can, right down to the exact day. And then, of course, where are all these records located? And when is the annuity payout day starting? And describe those payout benefits. So it's a lot of information, but you can see, I think from the earlier description, it all ends up being pretty important, and it's really helpful, especially the insurance company's name, the account number, and when that annuity contract was purchased, and ideally the location of the original records. That all is very, very helpful if you're trying to track down lost assets. Section 5, retirement plans and annuities, were lumped into the previous section. So we are now up to Section 6, real estate, your primary residence. And this applies whether you are a renter or an owner of your primary residence. We're on page 31 for those of you following along in your printed book or on the website. The idea behind this section is to provide the information a person would need to step into your shoes and operate this property, whether it's for the short term because you're in the hospital with a broken leg, or the long term because you've passed away and they have to run the property and pay the bills and take care of the maintenance and so on until the property goes to the person you have specified, or it should be sold or whatever it is you want to do with it. So that's the purpose of this section. What is the purchase price? What was the date of purchase? What is the current estimated value? And you can ballpark it if you don't know for sure what that is, to give people an idea. What are the annual property taxes? Are there other fees associated with this property, like maintenance fees, or is there a homeowners association? Are there any liabilities against this property, such as a mortgage or a home equity loan or line of credit? Was it used as collateral to buy a business or another piece of property or a car? Or are there any other kinds of liabilities against this property? Who are the owners of this property and what is the type of ownership? Is it owned by a trust or a corporation? Is it owned by one individual or by several people in joint tenancy with rights of survivorship or something else? And then is there a list of capital improvements, and are there records and receipts for those? Now that can help offset any future tax bill whenever this property is sold. So it's important to keep very clear records and document where those records are located. Also, what is the location of the deed and the purchase documents, any title insurance, and anything else that jumps out at you as being relevant? So we're going to move on to page 32, keys. What important keys are in existence for this property and where are they located? Whether it's to unlock a shed or a barn or a storage unit or a back door, anything else. Any key somebody needs, let us know where it is, and hopefully you have a spare copy in a safe place. Document instructions for how to operate and shut off systems in the house, such as an alarm system, heating system, cooling system, the electrical service, gas supply, water supply. Especially for someone who is a city dweller, they may have no idea whatsoever how to operate a well pump. A few notes from you and maybe a pointer as to where the brochure is going to be greatly appreciated if circumstances arise where someone needs to know what that is. Also, if you have any tips and tricks or quirks about how your particular, maybe you have to kick the dryer to get it going or anything like that, let people know how to run this place in your absence. Moving to page 33, who are your service and maintenance providers? Do you have heating and air conditioning contractor, or an electrician, or a plumber, or an alarm service company? Anything like that. Landscapers. There are several benefits to this. One is summer comes along and I have no idea how to start the pool or maintain the pool or what should I do. If you have someone who's been doing it for the last 10 years, that's the person who we want to do it in this 11th year if you're in the hospital or something. And then also, if something breaks, the plumbing company probably has a record of exactly what sort of water heater they put in, and that they just put it in 3 years ago and it's still under the manufacturer's warranty. So all of those things, all that information is really useful and important. Also in this section, an inventory of your most important valuables. If you have a jewelry or a baseball card or an antique collection, anything like that, that's got real value. Document what that item is and where it's located. If you have photos you could attach, that's especially helpful. What is the current value? What's the cost basis? Do you have the location of any original purchase documents or receipts? And for things that are really valuable, perhaps you have an insurance rider and a special appraisal that was done to document the value. There are tables sitting in houses that are worth $60,000. I can't imagine buying a $60,000 table, but they exist. And if you have one and somebody coming in to manage your property or maybe sell off your assets, if they don't have awareness that they're looking at a $60,000 table, they might feel great selling that at a garage sale for $150. There's a program on PBS called Antiques Roadshow, and I think people's eyes are opened every single episode as to the incredible value of certain assets. So if you are aware that something's really valuable, let the people know who will have to step into your shoes. And that's that list of inventory for most important valuables, is on page 34. Also, your tax records. Do you have any outstanding tax issues? Do you have any records that would be important? Any strategies for planning for taxes? Are there any legal situations people should know of? Are there any audits or claims or disputes with federal, state, or local tax bodies? Document that. Who is the person who prepared those taxes? Do you have a tax attorney who takes care of those things for you? Incredibly important, because otherwise, a year from now, someone might get a document from the IRS and have no idea what that refers to, or the fact that you have paid a professional thousands and thousands of dollars to go down the road of negotiating this or navigating these waters with the IRS. And this person stepping into your shoes has to try and figure this out from square one when you've already worked all of that out. Take a moment, document that for the people who have to step into your shoes. Also document the location and relevant information for any safe or strong box, if you have a safe deposit box or a storage unit or a post office box. All of those are very important. A note on safe deposit boxes. It's different state to state, but many state laws seal safe deposit boxes upon becoming aware of an owner's death. The state law will determine access. So even if that safe deposit box has 2 owners, the state requires the bank to immediately seal that off, and it must have something to do with the state wanting to have awareness of any assets that might be subject to estate taxes. So if you have all your key documents, like your will or advanced healthcare directives, durable power of attorney, and other things we'll get into down the road, in a safe deposit box, and those are the only copies, that is not going to be helpful. If I'm in a car accident and I can't get to those documents because they're sealed off or people aren't even aware that that's where they are, it doesn't do me much good. I need to be able to access those things quickly. Section 7 of the 12 critical things your family needs to know. Loan and lease obligations. We're on page 37 for those of you following along in the book or on the website. It's really, again, not rocket science. Every loan, every lease obligation, mortgage, line of credit, car loan, lease, student loan, credit cards, or charge cards. What is the basic information somebody should have to understand what you owe, when you owe it, and who you owe it to? And also write down obligations that you have fully satisfied. If you've completely paid off a loan, especially if it is a personal loan, make sure that you note that and keep a record of it. And ideally you have some kind of receipt showing evidence that it has been paid in full. Section 8 of the 12 critical things your family needs to know. We're on page 41. Your advisors, such as your attorney or accountant or insurance agent or real estate agent or a banker or a clergy member or an architect. Who are the professionals that serve you in your life? Write down that person's name, the firm's name, their website, their address, the contact person if that's different from the actual advisor, their telephone number and email address, location of records, and then what sort of work or relationship has transpired. Section 9 of the 12 critical things your family needs to know. Advanced healthcare directives. We're on page 43. Advanced healthcare directives are documents that provide instruction about what should happen in the event of your mental incapacity. Say, I'm in a car accident and I am in a coma, or I am brain dead, or all kinds of other not very pleasant situations. Might include the later stages of dementia or Alzheimer's or other such things. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of some of these terms. I am not an attorney. These are not perfect legal definitions. Please seek a professional who is qualified to give you proper advice. But from a general informational standpoint, this should be helpful and will certainly be brief. 3 major components. A financial power of attorney. That is a signed legal document where you appoint a person as your financial agent or proxy or attorney, in fact. They are, under circumstances you specify, able to access your funds and act on your behalf to pay your bills, file insurance claims, and conduct other elements of your financial life. This is also known as a durable power of attorney for finances. Something that sounds similar is a medical power of attorney, and that is a signed legal document where you appoint a trusted person as your healthcare agent or proxy or attorney, in fact. And that person is authorized to make medical, not financial, but medical decisions for you in the event that you become incapacitated and cannot communicate on your own behalf. This is also known as a durable power of attorney for healthcare. And then a third document is a living will, and that may ring a bell for many of you. And that is a signed document directed towards healthcare professionals, specifying the kind of care you wish to receive in the event that you become incapacitated and cannot communicate on your own behalf. This is also known as a healthcare declaration or a directive to physicians. So, for example, my living will specifies, in the event that I am medically brain dead, I do not wish to be kept alive by artificial means. And you can specify the exact opposite, that maybe you do. Whatever you wish is perfectly fine. Learn as much as you can, talk with your loved ones, and then fill out the legal documents. I'm going to give you a resource for that in a second. And then lastly, document your wishes. And here on page 43, the first thing I direct your attention to is that if you go to www.caringinfo.org, you can access free advanced healthcare directive forms for all states and the District of Columbia online. And this is through an organization called NHPCO. That's the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and they provide these documents to you as a service to do good things in the world. I have no connection with them other than making people aware of them through this book and through this video. Second thing is to document your healthcare directives, that you've actually filled them out, and write down where the documents are located, where and when they were executed, and the contact information for all of your agents and proxies and attorneys, in fact, and so on. Section 10 of the 12 critical things your family needs to know, organ donation choices. We are on page 44. And I'd encourage people who are unsure about this to invest some time and learn what donating your organs and tissues really means. If you're on the fence, it really is a wonderful way to give of yourself to other people. It's said that you can save or enhance the lives of as many as 50 people. Imagine being able to give somebody back their parent or back their child, or give them the ability to see for the next 50 years of their life, or other things. So there are lots of myths with respect to organ donation. And the truth is, there is no cost to being an organ donor. You can still have an open casket funeral after organ donation if that is your wish. No one is too old or too young, so you shouldn't rule yourself out as a potential donor. And even those with serious medical conditions often have many healthy and desperately needed organs and tissues to give. So the idea isn't for you to remove yourself as an organ donor. It's to, if you are willing to donate your organs or tissues, make those wishes known and let the medical professionals decide what is and isn't suitable for donation. To learn more, 2 resources I'd suggest you have a look at: organdonor.gov, which is run by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and Donate Life America, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that links to each state's specific donation form. And that is at www.donatelife.net. There's a form here on page 44. This is one more way of being crystal clear in my communication, even though the form on page 44 is not a legal document. Section 11 of the 12 critical things your family needs to know, and this is page 45, the high cost of dying advice for consumers. Now, as you know, there are good people in the world and there are dishonest, bad people in the world. And that goes through every corner of society, and it includes people who run funeral homes. Many are extremely professional and respectful and honest. Some of them are not. The ones who are not can cause you or your loved ones to pay thousands or tens of thousands of extra dollars for your final arrangements because of pressure or persuasion to get people to spend more money than they can afford or otherwise would ever want to, just because they're in this vulnerable moment. Someone they love has passed away. They're not really sure what to do. Wouldn't your loved one have wanted the best? And all of a sudden, instead of buying a car or paying for a year of college, there's a funeral that's over in a few hours. And if that is your choice and you can afford it, perfectly fine. Good for you. This section with advice on page 45 is really geared towards making sure that you are aware of your rights and that you look at this the same way you would any other consumer transaction. Think of it as if you are buying a car or a used car. Doesn't mean everyone is dishonest, but you probably want to be sure that you are watching out for yourself. Or through some of the planning we're going to do in this section, you are watching out for your loved ones through good planning and good communication. Page 46, and this section is duplicated for your spouse or for your partner. So this is really just to focus on you. Who are the first people to contact upon your death? Name, address, phone number, relationship, email, notes, and so on. The second thing, and it's really important, is to communicate how costly should your final arrangements be. If somebody has checked very inexpensive or low to moderate cost, that relieves any family member from any feeling of guilt that, we're not doing enough. We've gotten a wooden whatever it is instead of a solid gold whatever it is. Or I have clearly written down, and hopefully I've had some conversations with people additionally, communicating I don't want people to spend a lot of money on my final arrangements. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you do. If you're sitting on a giant pile of money and you want a solid gold, whatever, communicate that to people. Because just as you don't want people spending too much, you don't want them spending too little. If you set aside money and you have something in mind, good for you. You should have that. Next, military burial and memorial benefits. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA, often pays part or all of the cost of burial and certain markers and other things. To learn more and learn about eligibility, make sure you have your DD 214 and the relevant other information, and go to www.cem.va.gov or call 1-800-827-1000. Do you have any prearranged funeral plan or contract? If so, document that here. Is it prepaid, meaning has the money been paid in advance? Imagine something happens to you and your loved ones don't realize you have already paid $6,000 for all of your funeral arrangements, and instead they go to another place across town and pay another $6,000. Document that. Make sure people are aware, talk to them, and a horrible situation where people are filled with grief does not have to be worse because people are scrambling for money or they are completely unsure and fighting and arguing and feeling stress over what to do. If you're clear in your communication, you remove some of the difficulty of this terrible time. Are you a member of any memorial society? Those are also known as funeral or cremation organizations. And these are, generally speaking, nonprofit consumer groups dedicated to protecting consumers' rights to choose their final arrangements. And oftentimes they end up getting effectively a volume discount. We are going to bring through our organization 100 people a year on average to be cremated, so they get a volume of service discount. So if you are a member of one of those, document that, make sure to put down the relevant details so that whoever is taking care of your final arrangements can reach out and go forth with what you've arranged. Embalming. Embalming is the process of treating a dead body with chemical preservatives to temporarily prevent decay. It is very rarely required by law. It does not serve any public health purpose. If you eliminate that service, it will save you hundreds of dollars. And it is very profitable for funeral homes to perform this service of embalming, and they will nudge you towards it, or worse. It is not, almost never is it something that must be done. And it also involves some minor surgeries or sewing of places in the body, and it is not required for the most part. So don't let yourself be pushed into something if it is not what you want. Would you like to have your body cremated? The process of going directly to cremation without being embalmed, without having an open casket or a closed casket ceremony, is called direct cremation. This is a path to save a lot of money because you are avoiding an awful lot of services that are generally put forth with very high profit margins. What are your wishes? Think about it. Talk with your loved ones. Document what it is you want to happen. Make sure people know what you want. And in this section, describe your preference for an urn or some other receptacle. Is there a special object or box or vase or something you would like to have your cremated remains contained in? Or do you just want them to be very inexpensive or made of oak because you had an oak tree when you were growing up, or something else? Think about what you want, research it, document it. You'll get what you want. Do you want your body or cremated remains to be buried? And if so, where? How soon after your death? Right away? Right after the wake or the viewing? After the funeral or memorial services? Being buried shortly after death without buried is called direct burial, just as being cremated directly after death without embalming and so on is called direct cremation. And of course, direct burial is cheaper than incurring some of the other services. And then, would you like to have an eco-friendly or a green burial, where the deceased person's body is cared for in an environmentally sensitive way without the use of toxins and materials and other chemicals that are not biodegradable and so on? You can learn more about that visiting the nonprofit forestofmemories.org or the Green Burial Council at greenburialcouncil.org. Your casket preferences. My eyes opened and my eyebrows raised when I heard this, but you can rent a casket for wake and funeral services. It saves a fair amount of money and it conserves pretty valuable resources. But it is also, for me, a little bit strange to think of. What they do is they take the casket and the inside, there is a removable insert liner, and that is changed with every person who is in that rented casket. But otherwise, the vessel itself is just like other things you would rent. It is used temporarily. It's cheaper than buying that specific item. And then when you're done using it, it's left for somebody else. And then the actual burial or cremation after services takes place using generally some inexpensive option like a simple pine box or a sturdy cardboard coffin or something else. If a casket is going to be purchased, how costly should it be? Again, very inexpensive, low to moderate cost, higher priced, or premium. Gravestone, headstone, monument, or other marker. Again, how expensive should this be? What are the details of what you might be looking for? Is there an inscription or epitaph you have in mind? Should there be a military or veteran marker put in place? Should there be a companion marker if one spouse or partner is to be next to another? And then what is the final resting place for the body or for the cremated remains? Is there a family plot? Do you want to have your cremated remains scattered in some location? Write down what you'd like. Make sure to communicate that to people, and hopefully your wishes will be carried out. Is there a preferred charity for memorial donations? Or would you like to have flowers? In lieu of flowers, please make a donation to whatever. If you have something in mind, you let your loved ones know that. It's one less decision they have to make, and they can focus on feeling and managing their grief instead of all kinds of other things. Services. What services would you like to have? A viewing, a wake, a visitation, funeral, a memorial? Are there individual speakers or hymns? Would you like open or closed casket? Would you like to have the body or cremated remains present? Should it be military? Should it be religious? We're on page 49 here. Again, what do you want? Write it down. Obituary. Would you like to have an obituary published? Would you like to have a photograph? Do you have a specific photograph in mind? Is there pre-written text you would like to furnish to people, outlining your life and the people in your life and what you've accomplished and seen and experienced? And it's 100% up to you. If these things are important to you, document them here. Apparel and jewelry. Describe any clothing or jewelry or religious or other items that should adorn or accompany your body or cremated remains at any time after your death. And it might be a special necklace from your mother. And be very specific. I would like to have this on me, but I don't want to be buried with it or cremated with it. I want it to go to this specific person. So specify what the item is. Make sure people can identify that. If it's in a drawer with 5 other necklaces, we should be able to know this is the specific necklace you're talking about. Tell us where it's located, and then what should ultimately happen to the item. Who should it go to, or should it be donated to an organization, or should it be buried with you? Are there separate funds for final expenses? Have you set aside a pay on death bank account or insurance policy specifically to pay for your final expenses? If so, make sure to document that here so that the person you have trusted as taking care of your final arrangements can access that money right away and immediately finance the arrangements you are seeking to have done. So that is final arrangements. Section 12 of 12 critical things your family needs to know. Wills, trusts, and estate plans. We're on page 54 of the book, for those following along on the website or in your own books. Wills. This is also known as a last will and testament. This is a legal instrument that enables a person to make decisions on how, after death, his or her estate will be managed and distributed. It is very important to have a current and valid will. This book does not substitute for a will. This book is not a legal document. So you want to write down whether or not you have a will, if yes, when it was executed, where, the city, county, and state, where a current original copy of that will is located, when and by whom the will was last reviewed, and the method for creating this will and any related information. So by method, you may have used a lawyer, or you may have used some other online service such as a do-it-yourself book or software program. Make sure to document, if it's an attorney, the full name, that person's title, their firm, their contact information. If it was a do-it-yourself book or software program, write down the full title, the publisher, and the version number. Make sure to document also your estate's primary and alternate executors and all of their contact information. Trusts. Document the location and the details of any trusts that you have. A trust is a legal entity similar to a corporation or a limited partnership in some ways that holds legal title of ownership to assets, and it's for the benefit of one or more specified people, the beneficiaries. These are often used for estate planning and distributing assets in a certain manner. So I might not want my 18-year-old child to have the $1 million from my life insurance policy. So instead, I'm going to distribute $25,000 a year every year up until they're 35 and then give them a lump sum of what's remaining. And a trust is a vehicle for making that distribution happen as you specify. So I'm certainly not an attorney. I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but make sure to document whether or not they exist, where they're located, and all the details, like the exact legal name, where it was formed, when it was formed, who formed it, and the names and contact information for any relevant party. And the same goes for an estate plan. An estate plan details the overall strategy for accomplishing estate planning objectives regarding how a person or a family's assets and liabilities will be managed, especially after death. And finally, gifts of property. We're on page 56. Write down a detailed description of what the item is and where it's located, and then who should the item go to and under what circumstances. Under the death of me, or not until I die and my wife dies. And write down an estimate of what the value is, and if you have any original purchase receipts or appraisals. That also might end up being handy if you get into tax situations. And there we are, 12 critical things your family needs to know. If you follow all of these steps and you gather this information and you take your time documenting it, you will have your affairs in order. And this is such a wonderful way of showing your family how much you love them. My name is Mark Gavigan. If you need to reach me, I can be contacted through the website 12criticalthings.com. That's the number 1, the number 2, and then criticalthings.com. 12criticalthings.com. Thank you so much. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and good luck getting your affairs in order.